Thank you, everybody, for coming to this expert series. We're having maybe some technical difficulties, but I'm sure we'll get through it. Tonight's topic is helping business owners understand the requirements of drinking water and wastewater treatment systems before purchasing or leasing a property. So first and foremost, I always want to thank our sponsors, All Dry Services, Scadone Law, Vantage Builders, and Navigant Credit Union. So again, if you have the opportunity to use any of these of our sponsors, please tell them you said hello. You heard about them at the Rhode Island Commercial and Appraisal Board. So tonight, I want to give you a quick list of the bios of the speakers that you're going to be hearing from tonight. They will instruct you as to whether they're going to take questions or hold questions for the end. But first, I'd like to introduce Nancy Scarduzio. Nancy serves as the State Small Business Ombudsperson with the Rhode Island Department of Business Regulations. And in this role, she acts as an advocate for businesses, helps small businesses navigate laws, regulations, licensing, permitting with the various state agencies. Nancy has over 30 years of experience working in the field of environmental health and environmental management. Also on board tonight, Amy Parmenter. Amy is the Chief Administrator of the Rhode Island Department of Health Center for Drinking Water Quality. She is the lead administrator. Providing oversight for the safe drinking water and aquatic venue programs with the Center of Drinking Water Quality. Amy has 20 years career in the field of public drinking water. Also on tonight is Brenda Lee Viveras. Brenda Lee is Chief of the Rhode Island Department of Health Center for Food Protection. She's responsible for the safety and implementation of food safety regulations for over 7,000 licensed facilities in Rhode Island. Brenda Lee has over 12 years of experience in public health as a food safety expert. And rounding out the group tonight is Ray Taylor. Raymond is an environmental engineer who supervises the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management on-site wastewater treatment system program. He is responsible for the supervision, direction, and oversight of the statewide on-site wastewater treatment system permitting program. Ray is a Rhode Island licensed professional engineer. He's worked in the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, the underground storage tank program at Electric Boat Corporation as a senior structural engineer, and has a number of years experience in the environmental engineering field. I would now like to give it off to Nancy Scarduzio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to make a couple of introductory comments. This course is designed to make professionals associated with the real estate industry aware that there's a team comprised of staff with the Rhode Island Department of Health, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, and the Rhode Island Department of Business Regulation that work together and can be a resource to provide guidance to your clients that may be either opening a new business or expanding a new business that is not serviced by a municipal water supply system and or a public sewer system, meaning the property has a well and or an on-site wastewater treatment system, which many of you also know as a septic system. So this situation may apply to different types of businesses, such as breweries, wineries, maybe daycare centers. But in this presentation, we will focus on food businesses. So you'll learn about how you can direct clients to our team for guidance before they purchase or lease a property that may have a well or an existing on-site wastewater treatment system. And I want to share just a simple catchphrase to help you remember the importance of paying attention to the water system going into a facility and the wastewater system leaving a facility. And that catchphrase is water in and water out. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Amy Parmenter, with the Center for Drinking Water Quality.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'll be talking about the water in aspect, the drinking water systems and the process. So what is a public water system? It's a water system that provides water for human consumption to the public through pipes or other infrastructure. It has to have at least 15 service connections or regularly serve at least 25 individuals a day, at least 60 days out of the year. That can include any collection, treatment, storage, and distribution facilities under control of the operator of such system and used primarily in connection with such system, and any collection or pre-treatment storage facilities not under such control, which are used primarily in connection with such system. So those are the, that's the basic definition of a public water system. I'll next talk about the different types of public water systems. Next slide, please. So the different types of public water systems on this page is the two types that I'd like to talk about. One is a transient water system. Transient non-community public water system are places where people visit. So for example, restaurants, gas stations, and campgrounds where you have different people coming in each day. Non-transient, non-community public water system are places where people spend a lot of their time but don't live. So for example, schools, daycares, and office buildings. Next slide, please. The last type is called a community public water system, and that's where people live. For example, condo associations, towns, and cities. So again, those three are transient non-community or TNC, non-transient non-community or NTNC, and community public water system, where people visit, where people spend a lot of their, same people spend a lot of their time each day, and then where people live. So next slide, please. So what does a well look like? You're looking to acquire a property or a business and need to figure out, do they have a well? Are they a municipal supply? Well, one thing is, what does a well even look like? Go out and you look around the building, you might see something like this. So there's kind of two different looks to a well, and sometimes they're inside well houses, so they're not going to be out in the open. They might be in a little well house. But the one on the left is an example where there's kind of bolts around the outside, and you can see a pipe on the outside. The one on the right has a little bit of a different looking top, and the bolts are underneath, and there's a pipe next to it and a little bit of a different configuration. But those are just a couple examples of what a well, a drinking water well, looks like. Next slide, please. So this is a flow chart that comes from some of the resources we have available for this coordination group that we have for business owners. And this is the drinking water side of the flow chart. So if you want to determine what type of drinking water system is part of this property, part of this building or this business, there's a difference between whether it's an off-site public water system serving the facility or whether it's an on-site well. So on the left-hand side, you see offsite public water systems. So that's if a business obtains drinking water from a public water service, such as a municipal water or a public water system. That's the easy one. You submit a recent copy of the water bill with your RIDO Center for Food Protection application as proof of a public water system connection, and that's clear that you're on another public water supply. So that's usually the easiest part. Becomes a little more difficult if it's an on-site well. So if the business is served by an on-site well and holds an active RIDO public water system license, you'll want to submit a copy of the license with your Center for Food Protection application. So again, if it meets the definition, as I explained, it serves at least 25 people on average per day, then it's most likely licensed as a public water system, and the business will hold a license, the property, the well will hold a license, and if you have a copy, you'd submit a copy of it with the Center for Food Protection. If not, contact us and we would look that up. If the business is served by an on-site well that does not have an active RIDO public water system license, it is required by regulation to operate a business if water is used for one or more of the following activities. So if the business is doing food preparation and or washing of food contact surfaces and or utensils at licensed food establishments, if there's human consumption, and that does include hand washing in a public restroom, if it's restrooms available for more than 25 people, customers and employees daily for at least 60 days out of the year, or if there are at least 15 service connections. And it's possible that an on-site well may not be able to meet this requirement. So you would, figure out if you fall into any, or your clients fall into any of those categories, contact us at the Rideau Center for Drinking Water Quality. And this is our main office contact number information here. 222-6867 is our phone number. And then we also have an office email address as well. It's doh.ridwq@health.ri.gov. Next slide, please. So to operate a licensed public water system, the land within 200 feet of the well needs to be reserved for protection of the water quality of the well. It's called source water protection. And it needs to be delineated on a site plan by a topographic map of the 200-foot radius area to an appropriate scale. So the engineer would submit a map with the well or the proposed well location, and we would look into whether that area is owned or otherwise controlled by an easement by the owner. And so I want to save that for a little bit later and talk about the additional area that we look at for source water protection. And that's the second bullet here, which is the application must contain pertinent information within 1,750 feet of the proposed well. And we have a website with the information on instructions on submitting a public water system application, and the link to the website is right there. Another requirement, and I'll just mention that 1750-foot radius is also reserved for protection, but it doesn't have to be owned by the owner of the well. But we do look into that area to see if there's any large potential sources of contamination that could contaminate the well over time. The third bullet here talks about attending a meeting with us. So another requirement for new water system owners is to attend a required in-person meeting with Rideau staff. Now that's actually for new water systems. And the purpose of the meeting will be to provide training and information on the responsibilities and obligations for becoming a public water system. There are multiple requirements involved, and so we find that it's best to sit down and really talk through them face to face. Applicants will receive comprehensive information and guidance to ensure they're able to fulfill all regulatory requirements prior to activating the water system. Next slide, please. So this is an example of a 200-foot radius. You'll see a red square there. That's the property line. There's a red dot kind of in the middle right, and then there's a circle around that red dot. So that red dot is a well, and that circle is the 200-foot or the 400-foot protective radius around the well. And that area needs to be owned or otherwise controlled with an easement for the majority of that area. Now, we do have some variance allowances, but not for much. We might allow a variance for up to 15% of that area not to be owned or controlled, but that's kind of a case-by-case basis. The other point to note about this protective radius is it also needs to be kept clear of potential sources of contamination. And potential sources of contamination to the well and the aquifer under the well can be varied. And so in some examples in this map, you see a parking lot, there's a building, there's also a utility substation and transformer, there's a highway, there's some stormwater drainage from the highway. So there are some potential sources of contamination in this area that would cause us to question whether we can approve it because the well would not be protected from potential sources of contamination. Next slide, please. This is an example of a good 200-foot radius that we would likely approve. So you see the well in the middle of that red circle there, that's in the middle of the woods. There's some white boxes on there. I just want to note that's just kind of like white out over some text, but those aren't buildings. But this is an example of a good protective radius, as long as it's owned and or controlled with easements by the owner of the well. It doesn't have any potential sources of contamination within it, so we would most likely approve that site for a public water system well. Next slide, please. This is an example of that larger area. So that's a 1750-foot radius called the wellhead protection area. Now that doesn't have to be owned beyond the 200 feet. You can see that same red square that we were just looking at. So this is zoomed out, looking at a larger area. But we do need to make sure there aren't significant potential sources of contamination in that area. So in this case, there's a real big significant potential source of contamination, and that's just north of that red box, which is the junkyard and salvage yard. So that would be something that would cause us to deny an application for a public water system well. There's also some others to the north of that. That's a sand and gravel mining operation. There's an automotive repair shop with obviously a very large parking area or fleet area. And there's also photographic processors, which process a lot of chemicals. So we would not approve a well or a business with to open if they have more than 25 people on average per day. If they meet the definition of a public water system and they have what was previously a private well on the property, then we would not approve that that well, and therefore the business could not open under that business plan with more than 25 people. Next slide, please. And this is an example of a good 15-foot radius where there's mostly woods. There's not a lot going on in the area. There's a highway and some development in the far east of the area, but otherwise that's considered a better area. And that's the same slide we just looked at, but zoomed out. Not the same slide. The same slide we looked at 2 slides ago, but zoomed out. Where the 200-foot radius is good, and then that greater 15-foot radius is looking pretty good for approval. Next slide, please. So important considerations to make your clients aware of. Every business and location is unique. A lot of these are case by case, but we do have set regulations that do apply to all of them. So make sure your client does their due diligence to determine if the location can comply with our regulatory requirements and support their business before they purchase or lease. Because we have had examples where they buy the property, they buy the business, and then only to find out that they can't get their well approved. So they need to do that in the reverse order, and they need to make sure their well can get approved for the business that they want, and before they purchase the property or the business. So that can be very costly if they do it in the wrong order and they get denied from us. So help your clients identify the regulatory agencies that may be involved, such as the local municipal officials and state agencies, such as RIDO and RIDEM. These agencies can provide guidance to your clients before they make costly mistakes. Factors that may impact regulatory requirements include the type of business being opened, such as a food establishment, seafood processing operation, daycare, for example. The number and frequency of visitors or staff the business will have. Again, that 25 people is the magic number. And then the location, such as the city or the town. Next slide, please. And then if the business operations actually change to a different type of business, so that means the activity has expanded or it's a different activity, and the use changes, or it turns into, say, a community water system where it previously was a school or a restaurant, then that might also change the requirements. So you can suggest that your clients hire the appropriate licensed professionals, such as engineers, attorneys, for example, to assess the property, any paperwork related to the property, make sure the infrastructure can support the proposed use. Clients should be aware that a water system requires ongoing monitoring, disinfecting, sampling, and reporting to RIDO. So there are a lot of requirements to determine before moving forward. And then to find licensed public water systems, you can actually look up whether you have a licensed public water system on that property or not. So you can click on this link here, which Brenda Lee is going to do, and you can go to our licensing page for public water systems, and you can enter a name or a city. And so you're able to search. So for example, Brenda is going to click on A1 Pizza down here, and you can see that they have information on here, including the type of water system. So you can see at the top, it says license type, PWS transient non-community, the address that they're at, their phone number, their license ID number, the date the license was issued, in this case is 1988. The expiration date, licenses do need to be renewed once a year. And then I don't know what year graduated means, but it says 0. But anyway, you can also see a map here, which is a really nice feature. It shows you the location of the license for the well as well. Next slide, please. Thank you, Brenda Lee. All right, and I think this is the last slide for me. So so we're going to have Brenda Lee speak on Center for Food Protection, and then Ray for the OUTS program. But so this DEM and RIDO business pre-application form should be completed by your clients who want to start a business that is not serviced by a municipal water system and or public sewer system. If you click on that form there, it takes you to that pre-application form that that they can use to fill out, so that we get this information and can help you and your client work through this process. So they put the business name, the name of the business owner, their contact information, the address, that address, contact information, and then answering some questions that help us guide you on what the different requirements would be, or your clients, and what the different requirements will be. Next slide. Oh, so we can continue on the slide. So our message to real estate professionals is please encourage potential buyers who want to start a business that's not serviced by a municipal water system and or public sewer system to complete the free online business pre-application form before purchasing or leasing a property. After receiving the form, staff from RIDO and RIDEM will contact the applicant to provide further guidance regarding what the necessary steps may be to get the business approved. And for more information, we also have this link, Understanding Business Pre-Application Requirements for Drinking Water Wastewater Treatment Systems, another resource for your clients to take the appropriate steps and get the knowledge that they need going into making a costly choice. And I think that's it for my slides.
Amy, did you want to take any questions with?
Yeah, I think we wanted to maybe have time to take 1 or 2 questions, and then we might have time at the end after Ray and Brenda Lee give their presentations as well. Does anyone have a question right now?
Yeah, I do, Amy. How frequently is the water tested?
So it depends on the type and the size of the water system. So at minimum, it's tested once a month for bacteria. But for example, a large community water system might be sampling several times in locations per month. We also have some chronic contaminants that won't make you sick if you drink 1 glass, but over 30 years, you could get cancer, for example. So we have some of those that are sampled on a less frequent basis, such as once a year, once every 3 years. So it kind of depends on the type of system, but at minimum, they'd be sampling for bacteria at least once a month or so.
Do they also check for radon in the water?
Radon is actually not a regulated contaminant in the water. Radon is not regulated by our regulations, but it is often tested for air quality. So for houses or buildings, if you test the water, you can then convert the water result to an air result and determine whether it exceeds the air standard. So yeah, but there are certain public water systems are required to sample for other radionuclides such as radium, uranium, and gross alpha.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think that's my cue. Hello, everyone. Now that Amy's done an excellent job of getting water in, let's work on getting water back out. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about public sewer, and one of the best things to do is to look at and figure out what that would mean. One of the best ways for your clients to determine if they have a public sewer available would be if the property in question has a sewer bill. That's a dead giveaway. If you're looking in the nearby area and you see large steel, usually cast iron lids that read sewer on them, another good indicator. Not always 100% accurate, but it can point you in the right direction. Another option for the types of systems available is if the property has an existing system that's already in use and approved and conformed through my program. If that's the case, the applicant will need to complete a system suitability determination, or SSD, approval for that out. We'll get into that with a little more detail later. One of the last options would be to have a cesspool, which is not allowed. Any cesspools need to be phased out per state law. And obviously, I guess the first one there, the first bullet, is any new system. If they're putting up a new building or they want to install a new system to meet the requirements, that's also something that can be considered. Next slide, please. This is a profile of a very simple, straightforward system. Working from left to right, you can see the well where the water is coming into the property. And then you've got your appliances utilizing that water and sending it out the sewer into the septic tank. The septic tank has treats that water, and then it's sent out to a distribution box. The distribution box equalizes the flow and helps distribute it out among the drain field. From the drain field, then it's put into the ground and infiltrated, and the microbes in the soil finish treating that effluent before it reaches the groundwater. Next slide, please. This is an image taken by one of my field staff of a conventional trench system that's ready for final inspection from us. If you look on the lower right side, you will see the septic tank that we just discussed. Following the teal pipe out, you'll find the next concrete box sort of in the middle of the picture. That's the distribution box that allows that splits the flow between the three trenches you see going away from you. In this particular status, this is when we do our cover inspection. It's kind of a rare view that most of the public does not get a chance to see. Think about it. Yeah, most of the septic systems have something like this in the ground that people walk on every day. Next slide, please. So I mentioned an SSD, or system suitability determination. And what that does is it kind of answers the question for your client of, can an existing system handle a change in the flow, volume, or quality? So all systems are rated based on their capacity to process the liquid coming out. And that's also evaluated in terms of strength. The outcomes of this can either be an approval, allowing the change in use, saying that the septic system is appropriate and capable of handling that, or it could be a requirement to have an engineering analysis done and have a qualified professional examine the system and determine whether or not it is capable and in good enough shape to do the job. The last option is obviously a denial. Through the process, one of my inspectors will come out and evaluate the site, take a look and see what they can see at the surface level to try and help provide clarity to my office staff. Next slide, please. So a great example of when you might use like a system suitability determination is if your client is looking at an existing business, say a small marketplace, and their business plan is to renovate it and turn it into some kind of a deli, possibly with some sit-down seats, or public bathrooms. That could result in a change in flow volume to the system. That would need to be evaluated. If you need a new system, obviously that would be new permitting. Sometimes the existing system is just not going to be up to the task or capable of handling that kind of flow for any sustained length of time. From here, I'd like to take an opportunity to show you our permit lookup tools so that you can do some of this research as well, and find what your client might need. So on our website, dem.ri.gov/septic brings you to this. If Brenda Lee would kindly scroll down. Right here, you'll see two options for a historic permit search and an active permit search. The historic permit search is anything prior to April 17th, 2025, when we turned on our new system. If you would so kindly go into the historic permit search. So let's say your client is looking at a property located at 1190 Main Street in Richmond. You could select the town as Richmond, and then you can click search. It's going to turn up a lot of results because it's searching everything for Richmond. Down here, if you look just above where the, right there, says type here to filter by street owner, designer, and plat lot. So you could type in the 1190 Main Street here. There we go. And it just popped up as the top one, the one we're looking for today. So if you open that up, you'll see a lot of data about this system in question, including who designed it, what its daily flow is approved for. In this case, 888 gallons a day. If you scroll down a little further, you'll see a green button that says Generate Certificate of Conformance. This is oftentimes used as evidence of a facility having an appropriate septic system. So closing out of this, we'll head back to the new system, the active permit search. Scrolling down, you'll select OUTS permit search. And then you'll have to scroll down further to get to the site information. In this case, let's search 21 Davis Road, and that'll be in Situate. There's our property in question. Again, opening it up, you'll see that you have a button to generate the certificate of conformance, as well as other documents associated with this file. If you look down lower there, right there. So those are all the different papers associated with that file available for your review. You can also generate the certificate of conformance here as well. Is it not working today? No, there we go. Perfect. So those tools will allow you to kind of look at any property. Keep in mind, this also applies to residential properties, commercial properties. It doesn't matter. We're all set with this one, Brenda Lee. Thank you. And I think that ends my segment. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. How do they determine, like, if you're a restaurant, the size of the septic system? Like on a house, it's they go by bedrooms. How do they determine it on a restaurant? Would be by people?
It has to do with the type of service provided, the number of seats, food preparation. Each one of those items has a certain amount of flow per day associated with it.
Thank you.
Hey, Ray, I had one question too. Does this differentiate when you search? Does it differentiate the type of system? Like if it's an engineered system, if it's a standard system, a bottomless sand filter, any of that? Is that delineated in the search?
The search should have some flags that'll show what type of system is there, whether whether it's a bottomless sand filter or BSF or a conventional trench system. So I mean, those details are there. They may be a little harder to see, and you may need a little bit of help to decode some of what's there.
Great, thank you.
If that's all, I'll turn it over to Brenda Lee.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm happy to have the opportunity to share some guidance that will hopefully help you better support your clients as they navigate the process of opening a food establishment, and talk a little bit about how approval for water and septic kind of fit into the food application process. So let's walk through the key steps that your client will need to complete when opening a food establishment. So we typically tell them to start with zoning approval. So first, your client must obtain zoning approval from the city or town where the food establishment will operate. This will confirm that the food-related businesses are permitted at that chosen location. And then the next two steps are really that wastewater and water step that Amy and Ray kind of went over. But step two, making sure your on-site wastewater treatment system has been approved. So if the property is not connected to a public sewer system, your client will need approval from the Department of Environmental Management. This may involve a system suitability determination for an existing system, or an application to construct a new on-site wastewater treatment system. And then that documentation will be required as part of your license application with the Center for Food Protection. Similarly, if the property relies on a private well instead of municipal water source, your client must obtain approval from the Department of Health's Center for Drinking Water Quality to confirm that the water is safe for use through that public water system. Then you have our license application and fees. So your client will then need to submit a complete license application, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few slides. We also require a certified food safety manager. So they'll just have to make sure they have the appropriate number of managers that are certified in food safety. This really depends on the type and scope of the operation. We also let them know that they have to obtain the necessary local permits from city or town officials. So that includes things like the building department and the local fire marshal. And then lastly, once the facility is fully constructed and equipped, your client must schedule a pre-operational inspection with the Center for Food Protection. And if the inspection is satisfactory, then the license is then issued. So here is a guidance document that we created to help understand what a business may need in terms of their water system and septic system or on-site wastewater management system. We're always happy to help. I know Amy had shared earlier the pre-application for a business to fill out. That's what the links are here on this screen. One is this guidance document, this flow chart that you can see on the screen. And then the other QR code is for that pre-application that we shared earlier. This pre-application, it goes to all the people that are presenting today. And so we work together to really provide each business next step. So we really encourage everyone to fill this out before they purchase a property, so they have an idea of what their next steps may be and if it's feasible for that location. A lot of the pre-applications that we get are for food establishments. So we see that, for example, restaurants, coffee shops. It might even be something like a wedding venue. Another type of operation that you may not think of is even something like a daycare. They often have kitchens where if they're applying for a food business license, they would need to meet those requirements. So we see a variety of different types of business, but anything that would serve food to the public, we would highly encourage them to complete this. So Rhode Island adopts the FDA Food Code, which sets the national standards for food safety. The food code outlines requirements for food handling, equipment, sanitation, personal hygiene, and the physical facility, including the water and wastewater systems. So for realtors assisting clients interested in opening or operating a food business, it's important to understand how these requirements apply to that specific location. And so there's really two key areas here to consider. One, obviously the drinking water. Any food business or food service establishment that uses water to either wash, prepare, or cook food or drink sold on site, they would require drinking water from a public water system. So this is required under Rhode Island General Law, Chapter 4613, but also in the Food Code in Section 155. And then the second kind of requirement in the food code that we'll talk about today is that sewage disposal. So sewage or wastewater must be disposed through an approved system that's either a public sewage treatment plant or an individual sewage disposal system that's properly sized, constructed, maintained, and operated according to law. So please note, in the FDA food code, the term that they use is that sewage disposal system. However, in Rhode Island, and the terminology that we use now is on-site wastewater treatment system. So that's the same thing as sewage disposal system. Those terms are the same. Both the food code terminology is a little dated. So when your client is applying for a food business license, they're going to have to submit documentation related to the wastewater and water systems as part of their application. So this step really ensures that the facility has the proper infrastructure in place to handle wastewater and drinking water safely, and both are critical to protecting public health. So on this slide, we'll talk about the documentation for the on-site wastewater treatment system. If your client, again, is connected to that town sewer, they don't need to complete the pre-application. They would just submit a copy of their sewer bill as documentation with their application for the Center for Food Protection. If they're not connected to a public sewer system, they will fall under the on-site wastewater treatment system. And so there's really two scenarios. They either have to submit a copy of the system suitability determination for an existing on-site wastewater treatment system. And this document shows that the existing septic system is properly sized and constructed to handle the wastewater discharge for that proposed food operation. Or if it's a new system, they would need to submit the construction permit application and a copy of that certificate of conformance, where we just showed you using the website how you can find that. So again, these confirm that the system has been approved, constructed, and sized appropriately for that business use. If the property your client is interested in is connected to the municipal water supply, then they don't need to fill out the pre-application. They would just submit a copy of their water bill as documentation. And then again, if they're using an on-site well, there's going to be two possible situations. They have an existing well that has that public water system already approved. If that's the case, they just provide us with that number. You can look that up on our website that Amy showed earlier. And if there's a well without a PWS license, then we would strongly encourage them to fill out that pre-application, and we could provide guidance on next steps. They would have to submit an application with the Center for Drinking Water Quality to obtain approval for a public water system. And then once they got that approval, they would then submit that with their application. They would submit that PWS. But this would need to be done prior to getting the food business license. So again, as a realtor working with clients who are opening or expanding a food business, it's important to know what goes in a complete food license application. So again, these are the key documents that your client would need to submit. So one, the application form. All our applications are on our website. This depends on what type of facility you're opening. There are different applications. So for example, we have a food service application for a restaurant. We have a market application. We have a mobile food establishment application. So you can go on our website and access all of our applications. There's a fee associated with each license type that must be submitted with the application. And then the next two steps, that's going to be that documentation for the on-site wastewater treatment system or the sewer bill. and then that PWS number or a water bill. There's also a proposed menu that needs to be submitted. The menu gives regulators insight into the complexity of the menu, the equipment that's needed, the layout considerations of the food establishment. We also look for things like a consumer advisory and allergen information. Another thing that needs to be submitted is a food safety plan and an operational plan. This gives us a little bit more detail about how the operation is run. We look at things like equipment, do they have enough refrigeration for the menu? So it gives us really good insight into exactly what the operation is. We have templates on our website that can be used to fill out both the food safety plan and operational plan, and we've actually included them in our applications to make it easier. So they can just fill that out. That it's kind of provides step-by-step guidance on what's needed. If it's new construction, there also needs to be a construction application. This is required if you're building a new facility or there's undergoing significant renovations. We do, recommend that you complete this prior to building the kitchen. We have seen situations where they don't submit this until after the kitchen is already built. And then we've run into issues with, maybe sinks being in the wrong locations or missing certain sinks. So submitting this ahead of time is really helpful to say, we will review it and say, okay, this is needed here. Maybe you can rearrange this to fit in, a needed mop sink over here or 3-base sink. So submitting your construction application, early before construction has started can really help save costly mistakes. There is a plan review fee. This is the fee equals the license fee, and it's charged for new buildings. And then lastly, we ask that you submit 3 sets of architectural plans, and that's for us to be able to conduct the plan review to let you know if anything is missing or not in the establishment. So there's quite a bit that goes into the application, but these are the main components. We have templates online that make things a lot easier as well. And that is my last slide, so I'm happy to take any questions.
How long does the application process take and what is the fee for it?
So the fee varies based on what type of restaurant it is. So they vary, they range anywhere from, I think, like $100 to a few $100s, depending on the type of operation. In terms of how long it takes, if it's completely new construction, we suggest submitting it about 4 weeks ahead of time. If it's a existing restaurant, let's say it's a pizza place and then another pizza place is going into that, it's a little bit of a quicker turnaround time. We could do that in about 2 weeks because it's probably, going to be a similar layout and operation. But when it's new construction and plans have to be reviewed, we suggest 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for the previous speakers? So with that, I think this concludes our presentation, and we hope that you reach out to us or have your customers or clients reach out to us if they need any assistance with any kind of on-site wastewater treatment system or a public water system. And we have that form where we'd like to direct people to fill out that form so we have an idea of what situation they're in. So thank you very much. We appreciate your participation.
Well, and thank you very much. And thank you for joining us in our expert series here. And again, if you were here and we were all standing around, a round of applause. But once again, thank you, Nancy Scarduzio, Amy Parmenter, Brenda Lee Viveris, and Raymond Taylor for coming and giving this presentation. And again, I want to thank our sponsors, All Day Services, Cadone Law, Vantage Builders, and Navigant Credit Union. Keep your eyes open and keep your eyes on your inbox there for the next series, expert series here with the Rhode Island Commercial and Appraisal Board. And for everybody that was able to tune in, hopefully everybody made it tonight that was trying to get here. Thank you again and have a great week.